Hello, friend. My name is Odowole Godwin, and welcome to Much Economics. Our discussion on the markets for factors of production continues today with this particular class, which is all about the market for capital goods. Now, factors affecting the demand for capital goods. So, what we are going to be talking about here is about the demand for capital goods. Now, if you've checked across textbooks and all of that, or probably from your teachers, you discover that not a lot is being said about capital goods. We tend to talk about the labor market and all of that. And whenever we are referring to capital goods, we tend to talk about the financial capital, and that's why you have the price of capital. We have the reward for capital being interest. Now you see, when we're talking about capital, basically in economics, we are just referring. When we're talking about capital as a factor of production, we are just referring to the stock of buildings, equipment, machine, and so on and so forth that are used in the production process. All right. So in that particular case, so I call the reward for capital just the price of capital. I just call it PK. So I'm not giving it. I'm not saying that it is interest, because when we are talking about interest being the reward for capital, we are really talking about financial capital. So why should I say that interest is the reward for a building, a school building, or maybe a firm's building and its equipment and so on and so forth. So I just leave it as the price of capital, so PK. Now, what are capital goods? Capital goods are goods that are not useful in themselves. That is, capital goods are those goods that are used to produce other goods or services. So you see, a capital good could be used to produce another capital good, and a capital good could be used to produce a final output. All right. But what I'm just trying to say is that capital good in itself does not produce something that gives immediate utility to a consumer in terms of maybe just in terms of consumption. So they are not consumer goods. All right. They are not things that you just take and then they give you a kind of satisfaction immediately. No. Capital goods are used to produce things that would, at the end of the day, give a consumer satisfaction for consuming it. Now, the factors affecting, I believe we all understand what demand is. So the factors affecting the demand for capital goods. First is the price of capital. Of course, the price of capital. You see, when we're talking about I think the first part of this particular video, I refer to a marker. All right, being a capital good, because a marker is not useful in itself until I use it to write something on the board that you guys are not going to, that you guys are enjoying. For example, so if the price of this marker increases, so it increases so much, I may end up not using a marker. Who knows? I might just end up using the chalk. That's a kind of baffleness, but I'm just saying. All right. So the price of a capital goods, the price of a capital good determines the demand for the commodity. So if the price of this marker is then lower, of course, what's going to happen? So I might just decide to pile up a lot of markers in my drawer, okay, because it is now cheaper. So the higher the price, okay, the lower the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded of the marker, and vice versa. So that's on and on and on. So if a whiteboard, for example, is cheaper than a dark board and a blackboard, of course, what we just discovered is that we have schools that are using more of whiteboard to blackboard, or under normal circumstances, that is, other things being equal, just provided provided those are just the provided that price is the only thing that's being considered. We are not talking about considering the quality of a whiteboard and a blackboard. Who knows, a blackboard might be of a higher quality, and a whiteboard might be of a higher quality to someone else. So if we are considering just the price alone, if the price of a whiteboard is lower than the price of a blackboard, other things being equal, we have more schools, or any organization that will be making use of board using more of the whiteboard compared to the blackboards, and vice versa. So number two is price of other inputs, be it substitute or complement. Okay, so I was talking about the blackboard the other time and the whiteboard. So if it depends on that which, the two of them, they kind of give the same, they kind of render the same service. All right, so we write on the blackboard and we also write on the whiteboard. So in this case, they are substitutes. All right, they are substitutes. So if the price of the whiteboard is expensive, relatively expensive compared to that of the blackboard, provided that those are the only qualities that we are considering, or those are the main qualities that we are considering. So we discovered that organizations will be using blackboard more than the whiteboard and vice versa. Okay, what about complements? So we are talking about this. Let me come back to this marker again. Okay, for this marker to work, it needs an ink. Okay, it needs an ink. All right, so you could buy the ink differently. So I buy the ink separately from the marker itself. All right, so if the ink becomes really cheap, if the ink becomes really cheap, so what's going to happen? I'm going to demand for more ink, and because that ink needs to be put in a place for me to enjoy, it needs to be put on the marker for me to enjoy the service of the ink. So that means I'm going to be buying more markers as well. So if the factors of productions, if the inputs are complements, all right, the higher the price of one, okay, the lower the quantity demanded of the other. Now this is what I'm trying to say. This is ink, and then this is the marker itself, just the cover. So if the price of the ink should go up, of course I will demand for less of ink. Okay, so if I demand for less ink, okay, I'm going to be demanding less marker, provided that the price of marker itself did not even change. All right, rather the market it does not even change. So that is exactly what happens. So the higher the price of ink, the lower the demand, the quantity demanded of ink, and that would reduce the demand for marker. All right, even when the price of marker is still the same. So and reverse is the case. So the lower the price of this, the higher the quantity demanded of it, and then the higher the demand for marker. So if they are, so we try to we when a capital good is being demanded, okay, so firms not only consider the price of the capital good itself, they also consider the price of other inputs. Okay, and is this going to be the best for us? Could we just use something else that would do the same thing that we want this capital good to do? Now, number three, the production technology. So here is just talking about the mode of production. So is it going to be labor intensive or capital intensive? So we are still in the pandemic period where schools are closed, markets are open, okay, some other places are closed as well. Okay, as well. So what I'm trying to drive at here is that for you to enjoy this kind of class in this particular period, for example, okay, that simply means you are on YouTube. So let's assume that every school manager decides to go on YouTube. Okay, they just try to. So you have them demanding for more computers and less teachers, because I'm saying less number of teachers simply because once a teacher records a class, the class is there forever. So what's the point of employing another teacher to come and take the class? Okay, so if you have a syllabus, all right, you just give a syllabus to a teacher, and the teacher just covers everything, all right, because the video on YouTube, you don't need any other teacher again. So that is the end of the teacher's contract. So you just tend to use more of computers, more of the internet, more of data compared to the number of workers staff. So in that case, because the firm is the schools are trying to become capital intensive, they end up using more capital and less labor. Okay, more capital and less. So that is what we are trying to say. So if it's another mode of production where face-to-face interaction is preferable to computers, where you could just ask your lecturer questions and you get answers immediately, and then you have the time the time to interact with your colleagues, and so if that is preferred to uploading classes on YouTube, of course would have schools, other things being equal, being labor intensive, that they are going to be having more teachers compared to recording classes on YouTube and making use of computers and so on and so forth. So the mode of production, the production technology also affects the demand for capital goods. Number four, significant changes in the demand for the goods that capital produces. Now I'm just talking about the goods that the factors of production produce basically. So if I was talking about this in the first video under this particular series, that the demand for factors of production is called a derived demand, because these goods are not demanded they are not demanded in themselves. Okay, we don't demand for them simply because we just like them and so on. We demand for them because there's a service or there's a good that they produce or a service that they render that we really enjoy. So in this particular case, whatever it is that capital is producing, if there is a significant change that says whether a significant increase or a significant decrease in it, we are going to be having a change in the demand for that capital. So let's look at a bakery. Let's consider a bakery, for example, where bread is being produced. Now, why I was talking about significant change is simply because a firm could be producing under capacity. Okay, it may not be utilizing its capacity. And remember that capital is the stock of buildings, equipment, and all of that. So it may have all of the things it needs and then be producing below capacity. So in this case, if there's an increase in demand for bread, of course, we do not really say there's going to be an increase in the demand for capital, because in the first place, the firm is not actually producing up to its maximum capacity. That's why I said significant. Significant, that is, if it is so large that now the firm, the bakery, has to enlarge its firm, it has to expand its firm. All right, so we say that there might be an increase in the demand for capital or a decrease. So it's either way. So if it's a significant increase or it's a significant decrease, okay, in the goods that capital is used to produce, all right, that is going to tell us the dimension, the change that occurs in the demand for capital goods as well. Then number 5, the corporation tax. Now, corporation tax, I believe you understand tax to be the levy, the compulsory levy that the government imposes on people, on the businesses, and so on and so forth. So, government uses tax to do a lot of things: the roads, the building of public schools, to take care of the health system, and so on and so forth. So, when we have the tax being imposed on corporations, if they are imposed on, when we have the tax being imposed on corporations to be very, very high, of course, that's going to reduce the amount of money available to do further investments into in their businesses. Okay, so in that particular case, it's the increase in tax, if it is so significant, okay, if it is so great, okay, so that increase is going to affect the demand for very many things that the firm is utilized, not the capital alone. In fact, it might lead to it's going to affect the demand for labor, the demand for land, and other stuffs and other factors of production that we may have. All right, so that is what happens when the tax is, because it's acts as a disincentive, so it reduces the total amount of money available with firm to continue running the business. Now, it also occurs the other way around. If the increase in if tax is really low, maybe tax was at a particular point before, and then the government reduces it to a very low point, all right, or to something that is significantly low. So what do we expect is firms are likely to try to expand their business now, because they have more cash at hand, they have more money to do that. So they are likely, other things being equal, okay, they are likely to expand their businesses, and because of that, demand for more capital, and so on and so forth. So before we go, there is other thing that I want us to know, that we have two graphs. So this graph represents the change in quantity demanded of capital. Of course, I believe we've gone through demand and supply before this particular class, and if you've not gone through that, we have a lot of videos on that for you to understand it. So there's going to be a change in the quantity demand of capital if there's a movement along the demand curve. If there's, so KD represents capital, the demand for capital. All right. So if there's a movement along the demand curve, we call it a change in the quantity demanded of capital. The only thing that could cause a movement along this curve is the price. Okay, so if price should increase to this, all right, we are going to be moving from point A to point B. All right, and if the price should reduce from this to this, we will move from point B to point A. So that movement is called a change in the quantity demanded of capital, and it is only caused by the price of the capital. That is, it is the change in this that tells us what happens on this particular graph. Now you see every other factor here that affects the demand for capital goods, apart from the price, is going to shift the demand curve. Now, let's take for instance the production technology. What do we have on this axis? We have the price of capital goods. What do we have here? We have capital itself. So this is not production technology, and what is on this axis as well is not production technology. But production technology affects the quantity of the capital that is going to be utilized. So if we based on the example that we had earlier, if schools decide to go to go e-learning, okay, if they decide to take their classes online, okay, so they tend to hire less number of teachers over time and then use more capital in terms of computers and every other thing. So in that case, we have the demand for capital increasing, okay, and this is increasing not because of this. All right, so what we are going to do is what we are just going to do is we have something like this so that you'll be able to understand what has just happened here. So this is 0, this is the price of capital, and then this is capital. So we have the initial demand curve, which is this. So we have this and this. So this happens to be PK1, and then this happens to be K1. So more of capital is now being demanded. That is, we have an increase from K1 to, let's say, K2, for example. But then it is not increasing simply because the price has increased. So the price is still the same. So all we just have to do is to trace this, extend it to where K2 is, and then we draw a new curve. Okay, so this is KD again. So this will be KD1 in this case, and this will be KD2, KD1 as well. So and this is KD2, on and on and on. So there's going to be an outward shift of the demand curve. So we call that change in demand. So in this case, it is called an increase in demand. An increase in demand. So that's what it is in this case, because it is the quantity of K is increasing. So there's an increase in the demand for capital goods. So every factor, it depends on the explanation and what is happening. Every factor that reduces the demand for capital goods, when the price of capital goods is not changing, okay, it's going to cause a decrease in the demand for capital, or a leftward shift, because it will be coming inside, okay, from the right to the left, or a leftward shift of the demand curve for the capital goods. So that is that about that. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you really did, please click on the like button and click on the share button as well to share with your family and friends and your colleagues at school. Hit the subscribe button for more of our videos. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.